Okay, thank you for watching Rocksteady. One more time, my name is Nigel, and my special guest, well, I need to give you a little bit of an introduction first. Anybody remember 1990 Guitar Player Magazine Sound Page Contest? Well, it just so happens that one of the winners of that year is the guest on my show tonight, this evening, whenever the heck you're watching it. Oh gee, let's see. Glen Kuykendall of Reston, Virginia.
Hi, Nige. How you doing?
Hey, Glenn. There you are.
Here I am.
All right, how did it feel to win that contest? It must have been quite an honor.
It was real surprising because I won with a studio outtake. I just to this day really couldn't play what I played on that tape that I sent him because it was all improvised, and I guess I just got kind of lucky. But it was fun.
I recall reading your little quotes, and it was interesting because you were saying, like, because you were trying to adjust the knobs on the mixing board, that you were holding your notes out for longer. So you're like going up. Well, okay. more trouble.
That is true. We were trying to sound check the drums, and we were just recording so that I could play it back for the drummer to hear the tape. And when we got done, I'd been turning knobs, playing my guitar, reaching over while I held a note. That was the tape that got sent in to Guitar Player, and that's the one they chose for the sound page. So it goes to show you sometimes you're better off not trying to perfect something, because maybe that's the best thing.
Just being yourself and just letting it flow.
It's a little hard to do that on purpose.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. Well, Glenn, how long have you been playing guitar for anyway?
I've been playing since I was 11, so that makes it 20 years. So I better be doing something with it by now.
Well, we're going to hear in just a few minutes that you are doing something with it. And before you play your first song, I'd like to ask you have a pretty bizarre-looking piece of equipment over there. Actually, a few, besides the tape deck, I think we've all seen one of those.
Well, what I brought in today, since it was a little bit easier to bring a tape deck than a whole band, I brought in pre-recorded tracks with drums and bass. I'm playing through a Trainwreck guitar amp, which is custom-made in New Jersey by a guy named Ken Fischer. And I'm basically playing straight in with no effects and right into this 112 cabinet. And pretty simple setup, but it works.
Oh, by the way, part 2 of my Ken Fischer interview will be on towards the end of the show. I went down to New Jersey and got some footage with him, talking a little bit about tube amp maintenance and also about how he got into the amplifier business.
He's a real nice guy. Every time I call him, I sit there with a pen and paper and take notes, because every time I talk to him, he tells me something different about a speaker I should try, or even a different brand of guitar strings. And he's always right, so I always try to keep an open ear to what he says.
Yeah, I learned a lot from him just working on this amp here. I did a few rather interesting projects which he helped me out with, like the Pento triode switch. And just, some wiring tips and that kind of thing.
He's a real nice guy. It's nice that his amplifiers are completely handmade, and when you order one, you're buying it from the guy that made it. There's no factory. It's just right out of his basement, so it's kind of neat.
And you get the cool looking wood carving on the front of it too.
People always ask me if I made the amp. I said no, but it is handmade. So, whatever.
Now, I'd like to ask you this. Do you keep up on the local scene around here? Is there many guitar players around this area that you particularly admire?
I think my favorite local guitar player in the hard rock scene would probably be Danny Leonard, who I know has been on the show too. I did a demo tape. I engineered their last demo at my studio, and I don't know, he's my favorite as far as a hard rock guitar player.
Yeah, we're talking about Dan Leonard of Kid Logic, of course, and the Kid Logic Everything in Excess tape was done at your studio. And also, Alter Ego, Fear, recorded in your studio. This was a home recording. Well, I would say home recording, like a 4-track. This was a big kind of like
home 16 track, which is
home
kind of
16 track,
which is kind of
full studio
contradiction in terms, but that's exactly the same place we did Danny Leonard's tape. I like Danny because we share a lot in common because we're both guitar teachers, and it's fun to talk about who we teach and how we go about that process and how to look at it as actually the way you make your living, which is kind of interesting. At the same time, sometimes you don't feel like you're working, but I guess it is work. It takes a lot of effort.
Now, when it comes to teaching, is there anything that you stress to your students above everything else?
One thing I stress that I have found a lot of teachers don't stress is the importance of tuning. I've found so many students that come in and they play for 10 minutes and they're out of tune, and it's like help them to tune their guitar. All of a sudden they sound twice as good just because the guitar's been tuned. I think electronic tuners make it easier, but you need to be able to hear it too, because if you can't hear you're out of tune, you won't even know that you should pull out the tuner and adjust the guitar.
Sound like C.C. DeVille, huh? Not to mention any names here, but...
But mainly to tell them to be in tune and also to record themselves. I've had guitar players come to me for lessons that have been playing for 3 or 4 years and have never recorded themselves, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot when you hear yourself back, and it you can be your own critic without feeling embarrassed to someone else.
You don't
really
necessarily.
helps.
I'm sorry. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy a 4-track, even if it's like a little portable radio with a mic, just so you can hear where you're making your mistakes. And 4-track is great too, because then you could improve your timing, get out of the metronome, and work on your timing as well. Which I'm sure that's something that a lot of students may have a little bit of difficulty in the beginning. I know I did. It took me a while before I got my rhythm down right, and I still go off here and there.
Well, I think rhythm is something you really develop when you start to play with a band, and you have to stay in time with the drummer. Usually he's the rhythmical leader, so you have to kind of learn to follow his sense of time. You need a good sense of time yourself, but following is almost more important when you're a guitar player, because the drummer's usually the leader.
Now, before you play your first tune, who would you say is your all-time biggest influence on the guitar? I asked you about the local player, but who did you wear the records? Do you hear any records that you wore out trying to figure their licks?
I would probably put it somewhere between Jimmy Page and maybe Jimi Hendrix. Those two. Because when I grew up playing, Hendrix was gone about 3 years before I started. Well, 2 or 3 years before I started. But I would say the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin, and Jimi Hendrix were the 4 that I really listened to the most when I was starting. Which is nice because they were in some ways simpler players to get started, to base your style around than a lot of the faster players now. So.
I tried to learn Randy Rhoads when I was starting out. That was kind of a challenge. Quite a challenge.
I think that's one thing I really stress with my students, is to try to start by learning an AC/DC song, or a simple Led Zeppelin song, or some ZZ Top or something, instead of trying to wanting to play an Eric Johnson cover or Steve Vai or Van Halen right off the bat, because you can be so frustrated that you may just give it up. And I think the main thing I stress with my students is to play stuff that is fun to play, and don't set your sights too high, because you still want to just have fun. And I think that's the most important thing about playing.